today. Angelina opened this story so beautifully for us, reminding us, I think the people in the back can't hear. Am I not on? Your mic. It is. Thank you. All right. There we go. Good morning. I'm so glad God gives us do-overs. I'm Reverend Heather Sparkman, and I am so delighted to be here with you. Angelina opened us so beautifully to this story where a criminal on a cross says to Jesus, "Remember me," and Jesus receives that plea with an open heart. And I want to share with you some words that maybe reflect what our criminal might be feeling. Dear Mama, they sentenced me to death. Today's my final day. I'm counting every breath. I'm bitter because I'm dying, so much I haven't seen. I know you never dreamed your baby would be dead at 16. Those are words from rapper Tupac Shakur, his song 16 on Death Row. Here's another one. I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' round the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on, but that train keeps a-rollin' on down to San Antone. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. Anybody recognize that one? Do I have to tell you who it's by? Who's that one? Did anyone know the first one before I identified it? I figured that would be the case. So we have these two sets of lyrics, one of them from Tupac Shakur on a song that was recorded in 1992 and released posthumously, and the other one by Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues, written in 1952. It's really interesting to think that these two musical genres, rap and country, although we might categorize this as outlaw country, and songs written decades apart have so much in common. We don't really think of rap and country, along with all of country's kind of related genres like bluegrass and other things like that, as having anything in common. These two genres speak to largely different demographics, right? If you went to a rap concert and you went to a country concert, the audience would look very different. They don't have a lot in common musically as far as the instruments used or the way they're played. But both of these genres have a history of telling prison stories through song. In country music, there are famous prison narrative songs like Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues. I Heard That Lonesome Whistle by Hank Williams, and Women's Prison by Loretta Lynn. Loretta Lynn, interestingly enough, got a lot of pushback for that song because it was unladylike at the time to sing about prisons. And Merle Haggard, I just couldn't even list all of the Merle Haggard prison songs. What was wrong with that boy? Did his mom not raise him right? Merle Haggard has, I don't even know how many prison songs, and I don't know enough about him to know, but somebody afterwards, you could tell me where he went wrong. And then there's rap songs such as Black Steel and The Hour of Chaos by Public Enemy, which recounts being jailed due to refusing to serve in the army. And Snoop Doggy Dogg with Murder Was the Case, which talks about a crime being committed and paying the consequences. Rap even features an album by rap artist Gucci with some of the songs recorded over the phone while he was in prison. And there are other rap albums that have been recorded entirely in prison in facilities that have recording studios. As I really thought about why there might be songs recorded from prison, I realized that maybe that is one of the only ways that these people are able to tell their stories. Like I said, the similarities between rap and country music are not obvious, but these two genres might have more in common than we think, besides just having a prison song narratives. Maybe the reason both of these genres have prison song narratives. In their own way, both of these genres give voice to populations in America that often feel displaced, voiceless, and disenfranchised. This might not be really apparent in country and Western music today, but this genre has its roots in the rural America of sharecroppers, small family farms, and that were often about to be repossessed by the government for failure to pay taxes. Cowboys roaming the plains, Depression and Dust Bowl era hardships, and the struggles of the poor and working class to feed their families and make their way in the world. Hip-hop and rap comes out of a narrative born in the streets and the projects where the legacy of slavery still haunts. Section 8 housing provides a roof overhead, but not a path towards the American dream. And violence is not rooted in natural-born aggression, but in the need to survive. The prison song, often a narrative about the woes of being in prison, the longing to return home, and the tension between remorse for the crime and the recognition of the circumstances that led to the crime. These songs give voice to the most dispossessed people in our nation, those who are incarcerated. It is easy for many of us, most of us in this room and live streaming probably, to remain distant from these narratives. If we are country music or hip-hop fans, we might enjoy these songs, but they are not narratives that we claim as our own. And they're really not the narratives of people we might consider our neighbors. But what if these songs are an American narrative and one we cannot and should not ignore? Our work as a church with the OPOP program, which stands for One Parish, One Prisoner, has brought my attention into focus on the prison system in America. We have the highest incarceration rate in the world, with current statistics citing that 629 of every 100,000 people in America is incarcerated. Our massive prison industrial complex incarcerates people of color at disproportionate rates. Black people make up 13% of the population in America. Are you ready for this? And 40% of the prison population. 13% of the overall population and 40% of the prison population in the United States. There is something not right there. In Washington State, among our youth prison population, Black youths are 5.2 times more likely to be imprisoned than white youth, and LGBTQ youth make up just 5 to 8% of the national population, but compose 13 to 15% of currently incarcerated youth. Before our work with OPOP, I was able to read this story of Jesus and the criminal hanging next to him on the cross as a reminder of the beautiful promise Jesus makes to us, that none of us are beneath his grace. Remember me, the thief says, and Jesus says, I will see you in paradise tonight. Who among us has not found these words comforting and reassuring? Even the thief can realize the promise of paradise. And this story is still that for me, but it has become so much more. This conversation with the criminal on the cross, along with Jesus' merciful plea that God forgive those who are cruelly crucifying him, stand in direct contrast to the dehumanization of the Roman justice system. The death penalty through hanging on a cross is common enough in the Roman Empire that 3 men are being punished this way at the same time. Tradition names the man who Jesus remembers as a thief, although the gospel does not actually tell us his crime. And the man himself admits to guilt, telling the other criminal that they are both guilty, whereas Jesus is not. We know from our understanding of the Passion narrative or the story of Jesus' crucifixion that Jesus is an innocent man condemned to die, and the other 2 men are not. But what crime could possibly justify the inhumane treatment that all 3 of these men receive? The Roman Empire was a time of relative peace, known in history as the Pax Romana. But it was a peace bought through cruelty, harsh punishment, and enslavement. Throughout the Gospel of Luke, we see the empire dehumanizing the people in its borders, particularly those who are not Roman citizens or who are poor. The Gospel of Luke opens with Mary and Joseph, while Mary is pregnant, traveling at the decree of the empire for a census which was necessary for the taxing of occupied lands. People are counted like sheep, a number on a report rather than a human being with a fully embodied life and story. And the gospel ends by giving us a new story. Jesus doesn't look at the man next to him and see a crime or a person defined by guilt. He doesn't see someone who is only worthy to die. He sees the whole person. And the sentence Jesus issues over this man's life is that he is worthy to be with Jesus in paradise tonight. Luke is helping us to see that Jesus' gaze sees our whole selves, where the gaze of the empire sees only how one participates in the empire or disrupts it. The man on the cross identifies himself and his fellow criminal by their crimes. He says to the man on the other side of Jesus, "We are guilty, and we deserve our punishment." Even his own self-description is limited to his identity as a criminal. But Jesus restores his humanity, naming him as someone worthy to be with Jesus in paradise. He is not simply a criminal. He is a whole person. This short story of Jesus' last moments on the cross are a story of forgiveness. We talk about that every year as we approach Good Friday. Jesus on the cross for our sins. But this nuanced interaction with the criminal hanging next to him cracks open what forgiveness looks like. Forgiveness above all else is the restoration of a person's humanity. When we forgive somebody, we move from defining them by their crime, their trespass, their debt, to seeing them in the larger context of their humanity. The person moves from being a liar to Sally, who lied to me and is also a mother and a nurse and once brought me soup when I was sick. This is actually one of the key indicators I use when I'm wondering if I still have forgiveness work to do with somebody, is I run through my mind how I identify them. And if the first thing that comes to mind is the crime I think they've committed against me, I know I still have forgiveness work to do. But if I can name them as a full person who did this one thing, then I know I'm on the road to forgiveness. And that's what Jesus shows us here. And really, this is what the prison narrative song is all about in both rap and country. Telling the stories of people who have been defined by a system that would rank them only according to their crime and would send them away with long and harsh sentences in order to buy a kind of peace in our nation. The songs fill out their narrative. Did you notice in the lyrics I opened with, in both that rap song and in the Johnny Cash song, that both songs talk about their mother? "Dear Mama," Tupac begins, "they sentenced me to death." Johnny Cash remembers, "When I was just a baby, my mama told me, 'Son, always be a good boy. Don't ever play with guns.'" Because every single one of the 629 people per 100,000 who are imprisoned in America have a mother. Every single one. Many have children, wives, brothers, friends. The prison narratives talk about the person's longing to be free, to be understood, to be forgiven in the same way we see the man next to Jesus naming his own longing to be remembered by Jesus. The prison industrial complex in America might feel like too much for any one of us to tackle. Honestly, I feel a sense of hopelessness when I think of how far we need to go as a nation to have a just justice system. But this story reminds me that the promises of Jesus are big and wide. They are for me even me, as John Wesley would say, but they are also for the person who has harmed me and done me wrong, and the person I am tempted to dehumanize, and the person I allow myself to ignore because they are just fill in the blank with however it is that we see people as less than human, because they are homeless, because they are an illegal immigrant, because they are imprisoned. You probably know what word best fits that sentence for you. And so I'll ask you to own it, even if it's just to yourself, because that begins to allow us to see something more than the label we put on people. Jesus calls us to hear the stories of the disenfranchised, to seek justice for the least of these in our communities, to forgive those who have harmed us, restoring both their humanity and our own. Not because they haven't harmed us. Forgiveness is not an excuse for wrongdoing, but it is a seeing of more than just the crime. And anytime we restore someone's humanity, we are participating in the coming of God's paradise here on earth. Jesus, will you remember me? The criminal pleads. Surely, Jesus says, I will see you in paradise tonight. Let us be creators of paradise here on earth by joining with Jesus and recognizing the full humanity of all people. Let us dare to hear the stories that might cut us to the core and build empathy in us for those in our society that have been thrown away as not worth more than life spent in a cell. Let us hear the stories of those who are houseless on our streets, those who have come to this country illegally. Let us hear the stories of addicts and criminals and those who have done us harm, recognizing that this is the path to forgiveness and freedom for all of us. In just a moment, for our prayer song, we will sing Jesus, Remember Me. Interestingly enough, it is our own version of a prison narrative, taking the words from the mouth of a criminal hanging on a cross. Before we do that, I want to end with some more lyrics from Tupac's song, 16 on Death Row. Tupac has been called a modern prophet, helping us see uncomfortable truths about our own society in the way that Hebrew prophets and Jesus, in his role as a prophet, helped expose the shadows in their own time. So let's let Tupac sing us out with his narrative about being 16 and on death row. And imagine how Jesus might hear this story and what he might say to the boy described in this song. The brother in my cell is 16 as well. It's hard to adapt when you're black and you're trapped in a living hell. I shouldn't have let him catch me. Instead of living sad in jail, I could have died free and happy. My mama, pray for me. Tell the Lord to make way for me. Prepare any day for me. Why? Because when they come for me, they find a struggler. To the death, I take the breath from your jugular. The trick is to never lose hope. I find my buddy hanging dead from a rope, 16 on death row. Dear Mama, they sentenced me to death. Today's my final day. I'm counting every breath. I'm bitter because I'm dying. So much I haven't seen. I know you never dreamed your baby would be dead at 16. Jesus, remember us when you come into your kingdom. Amen.